Hey! So, this is not my normal setup, and I'm not even in Memphis right now. Chad invited me to New York to show you a new book I've been working on. So I just finished my master's degree, and I came up with a lot of conclusions of what I felt like helped me the most. So today I want to go over 5 different concepts that I feel like helped me play melodically, and hopefully will help you as well. So those 5 concepts are going to be constructing lines diatonically, melodic shapes, voice leading upper structure arpeggios, creating melodies based off upper structures. I call this melodic upper structures. And then the last concept will be a synthesis of everything all into one. Everything we're going to go over today comes from an ebook I just released with jazz lesson videos. The ebook is called 50 Melodic Licks in case you want to get deeper into these lines. And they're written in all 12 keys, which can really help you internalize the language. If you want to download this ebook, you can use the code Saxologic for $5 off in the description below. Let's take a look at the first section, which is Diatonic Fundamentals. Alright, let's take a closer look at this line. So the objective of this line was to construct a melody using only notes of the scale, which is C major in this case. So in the first 4 notes, I'm outlining an F major 7, starting on the 7, that E. So you go from 7, 1, 3, 5. And the next 4 notes, this is really a melodic approach into that second measure. So starting on the E, we have a 9, 11, flat third, 9. And then we land onto the 5th of your G7 chord. From here on, we play another shape that's found in the scale. We play the sound of a D minor. And the last 2 notes of this shape conveniently diatonically encloses the third, one of the guide tones of this G7 chord. And from here on, we're able to just walk down the scale, which smoothly lands us onto the third of our 1 chord, the C major 7. This creates that 7-3 diatonic voice leading resolution. From then on, we mixed up the rhythm a little bit to add some variety. After this, we place a 1, 2, 3, 5 shape in the key of G, but it fits perfectly in this key of C major, because the notes gives you a 5, 6, 7, 9, which are all great choices for this chord, C major 7. Then from here on, we walk up the C major 7 sound. Just like in the beginning of the phrase, we had the same shape, where we're outlining a major 7 chord starting on the 7th. Same here, but starting on the 7th of this root of this chord, the C major 7. So you have this 7, 1, 3, 5. And then we end the line with a diatonic enclosure around the root, and we land on the 5th. So I find it really important to practice diatonic lines because whenever you transcribe solos, you're going to see chromaticism everywhere and all these embellishments. But it's really important to know what exactly are they embellishing? Where does all this stuff come from? In my opinion, diatonic fundamentals are really the source of all these brilliant bebop lines that you hear. You know that saying, first you must learn the rules before you break them? These are the rules. Often I find it probably the most difficult to actually create beautiful melodies out of just strictly diatonic lines because chromaticism can act as a crutch. So if you have a really strong sense of diatonic phrasing, then I believe when you branch outside of that, you'll be just that much more grounded. Alright, so let's hear this phrase slowly. Now let's hear it up to speed. Alright, so let's go ahead and look at the second section called Shapes. So I'm sure every time you listen to jazz, you hear something that you've heard before, but it's always in a different context, and maybe they even mixed up the notes a little bit. For a long time, I've wondered, how are they able to do that? How come this line can work in this chord, but then somehow it can work in this other chord? And how do you really maximize that? So in this section, we're going to focus on taking a shape and then applying that shape into any chord context. So one of those shapes is a really common one that you've probably heard before. So now let's hear it in the context of a 2-5-1. Alright, so in this line, we start off with that shape, which is an 11, flat third, 5, flat 7, and then 9. But rather than going down back to the root, We extend the melody by chromatically approaching the 11, but really this is an anticipatory early resolution into the G7 here. So we land on this fifth of this chord on the and of 4, and we tie into the first beat of the G7. Then we diatonically walk down to the third, and then we walk up, really anticipating the next chord even earlier, outlining the sound of C major 7. So that's what you see here. You see the structure of a C major 7 chord. This is the 1, 3, 5, 7, 1. And this is a technique that's used often, anticipating chords early, just to generate more colors from your lines in a chord progression. So when we land on the downbeat of the C major 7 sharp 11, we're landing on the 6, and this is really the first note of that shape. So how I chose this shape is, first I have to look at the parent scale. The C major 7 sharp 11 comes from the mode of C Lydian, and the parent major scale of C Lydian is G major. So using that knowledge, I took this common shape and played it in G major of this chord. Now if you analyze it in respect to this C major 7 sharp 11 chord, you see that you get very colorful chord tone options. You get a 6, you get a 5, you get a 7, a 9, a sharp 11, and a third. So we hit the guide tones and we hit the sound of that sharp 11. This is a really nice shape to play over this chord in this context. And just to make it sound more complete, I landed on the 6 because in the beginning of this measure, we started on the 6. So it adds a nice bit of symmetry when you hear it all together. All right, now let's hear it slow. And now up to speed. Alright, so as we progress, we get into more deeper concepts for all you nerds out there. So as you know, the third and 7, the guide tones, are your most important notes. But we also have a tendency to avoid some notes. Not all notes are created equal. For example, if you play a perfect fourth over a major 7 chord, it's not going to sound too great if you don't resolve it smoothly after, because it's really clashing with one of your guide tones. It's a half step apart. But you also don't often want to base all of your solos around roots and fifths, because then it gets boring. Your bass player and your pianist is always at least covering those two notes. So if you want to branch out of just thinking of the 1, 3, 5, 7, but you also don't want to think of alphabet soup where you're just thinking flat 7, flat 9, flat 13. I mean, no one really has time to think like that when they're soloing. So I find that a really good solution to this is to have a handful of upper structures. So what an upper structure is, it's a chord inside of a chord based off any note other than the root of that chord. So, for example, a C major 7 is an upper structure of A minor 7. Really, it turns into the A minor 9, because if you think of the chord tones of C major 7 in respects to A minor 7, you get the flat third, the fifth, the flat 7, and then the ninth. So let's go ahead and play a 2, 5, 1, 6 chord progression using only upper structures. Alright, so let's see what's going on here. One of the objectives is to make sure these voice lead really close together. One, it just sounds nice. And you notice a lot of these chords have many great notes that are in common, and then their small differences are really highlighted when you hear them change. In that first chord, the A minor 7, we use the upper structure of C major 7. So like we explained earlier, the C major 7 in context to the A minor 7 is a flat third, 5, flat 7, and then 9. It's worth remembering where exactly you place this upper structure too. So if you haven't already, I personally would advise that you make a mental note of where exactly this upper structure was so that you can play it in any context of your own. So in this case, we went to the flat third of our minor 7 chord and played the major 7 of that flat third. In the next chord, we're going to go to the flat 7 of our dominant chord and play what is called the C Lydian grip. The more technical term of it is the C major 7 flat 5. So we took that fifth, the G, and we lowered it down a half step. So now, in this chord, we're left with a 13, a third, a 9, and a flat 7. Going on, we voice lead smoothly into a chord that's really nearby. Now we're going to the major third of G major 7, and we're playing minor 7. So it's just like what we did with A minor 7, but the chord quality is inverted. So over G major 7, we're playing the B minor 7 chord. And finally, in the last chord, we placed another Lydian grip based off of the major third. So this upper structure will give you really effective notes for the sound of altered dominant. It gives you your guide tones, as you can see here, your third and your flat 7. But now it also gives you your flat 13, and it gives you your sharp 9. This sound is strictly altered. There's no other mode that contains all 4 of these notes. So this is a perfect note combination. All right, let's play it slow. Now let's play it up to speed. Okay, so in section 4, I don't know if this term is already coined, so I'm going to coin it now. I call it melodic upper structures. So in this section, we're going to be applying these upper structures. We're going to pick one and then create a melody out of it first. For example, let's take a major 7. Now I'm going to create a short melodic fragment out of that. So wherever a major 7 can be used as an upper structure, this little melody will work right there. So we're going to take that little melody and we're going to apply it to every chord quality. So the first one was the sound of a major 7. So if that's based off the sound of a major scale, now let's go ahead and turn this into the sound of a melodic minor. How we're going to do that is find any third inside of this shape and lower it down a half step. Now let's take the shape and turn it into the sound of a Lydian grip. We're going to find any fifths and lower it down a half step. Now let's turn it into the sound of a diminished scale. So any thirds or fifths, we're going to flatten both of those. But we're going to keep the major 7s in the 6. Technically, the 6 is the double flat 7 of the diminished. And your diminished scale contains a major 7, so we're going to leave those alone. There's also augmented major 7. This is pretty useful because this chord is an upper structure of the third mode of melodic minor. So in this case, this would work if you ever had a context where you needed to play E melodic minor. So where you would normally place an upper structure, now you can place these melodies that are the melodic version of these upper structures. So if you already know some spots where upper structures can be applied, and you know some melodies based around the chord quality of that upper structure, this will allow you to generate some really cool colors from chord to chord. Let me show you an example. This is the first 8 bars of Autumn Leaves. First I'll show you the shape over every single chord just to get an idea of the potential of this. As this gets more familiar, you can start constructing lines with this in mind. So let's take a look what's going on. In the first measure, I highlighted the sound of the C major 7 upper structure. This entire line is just notes of the C major 7 chord. For D7 altered, I utilized the G flat Lydian grip. So literally every note in this chord, except the very last one, which is just an approach note into the 5th of the next chord, are all notes of G flat major 7 flat 5. Then I went up this classic bird line, which is a walk up, starting on the 5th, walking up to the scale till you get to the 9th, and you diatonically enclose the root. Then here's a nice little melodic fragment. We're really outlining the sound of G major 7, and landing on the 6th of G, which is the 3rd of C major 7 sharp 11. In this B half diminished, we're outlining the sound of the Lydian grip from the flat 5th. This grip works great to really highlight the sound of Locrian. So starting on the 7 of F major 7 flat 5, we walk up the upper structure, all the way up to the E, and then we walk down diatonically enclosing the 5th of E7 flat 9. Now from here, I'm using another upper structure. I'm using B diminished major 7. This highlights the sound of a diminished scale. And then we land on the 3rd, walk down to the flat 9, root, flat 7, and here's that classic voice leading, the 7 to 3, landing onto the flat 3rd of our A minor 7 chord. From here on, we're enclosing the root of this chord, which is the A. Then we dip down into the major 7, which is indicative of the sound of melodic minor. And then we're going to commit by arpeggiating all the way up to the 9th here. And you'll notice that this utilizes the sound of C augmented major 7, which is the 3rd diatonic chord of A melodic minor. So this is another upper structure you can use in a melodic minor context. If you have a minor 7 chord and you want to use melodic minor, you can play augmented major 7 from the flat 3rd. After we get to the 9, then this is just a chromatic enclosure around the root, and then I end it on the 5th. For the last section, I call it synthesis, where I take everything I just talked about and put it all together. Here's an example of one. So from the first note and the first triplet, I do an upper structure of F major 7. And then starting on beat 3, we do a long chromatic enclosure around the 7 of this G minor 7 chord. And then the first 5 notes here, really you can use this shape as a melodic upper structure. This is a common sound. Flat 7, 5, flat 3rd, 9, 1. Then there's a 3-note chromatic enclosure around the flat 7 of the C dominant 7 chord. From here we're highlighting the sound of B flat half diminished. This A up here is just an approach tone of the flat 7 of this B flat half diminished, aka the flat 13 of the C7. Then we play the 3rd and then the 5th and tie it into the first note of the F major 7, which is cool because this G goes from the 5th and changes its function into the 9th. Then from here we play a famous bird resolution, 9, 1, 7, 1, 3rd, 5th. Then for this entire 2-5, I play a shape from the second section of the book, a 1, 3, 4, 5 shape, and it sounds pretty nice over these changes. This places us nicely for a half-step resolution onto the major 7th of our 1 chord. The first 3 notes of this measure is the sound of an E triad. For this measure, we took that shape of 1, 3, 4, 5 and turned it into 1, 2, 3, 5. And that subtle change really sounds nice. Now here it is again, slowly this time. And here it is one more time fast. Alright, well I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoyed the change of scenery. I always get nervous when Chad is around. And again, if you want to dive deeper into these concepts, I wrote 50 lines and turned it into an ebook, and you can find it in the description below. But don't forget, you can use code Saxologic for $5 off. All these lines are 100% from me, so I hope you enjoy a peek into my brain. Alrighty, well thank you guys so much for 167,000 subscribers. Have a good day.